And hello everybody once again to Minuteman Vape Reviews. Today what we're going to talk about is something just a little different than what we talk about a lot of times. And it's something that, I've been wanting to do for a month and I've just kept not getting the chance to do it. Today what we're going to talk about is actually the House Appropriations Committee markup for fiscal year 2018. Yes, we got some bad news when the Senate came down with their version of the bill, which did not include any of the vaping language. But, understanding a lot of what is going through some of these people's heads is part of actually understanding how we can win this fight. Now, what we're going to do, this is going to be a very long video. I apologize, but it's going to match to some of the stuff I've been promising you guys that I was going to start doing. So what we're going to do today is we're actually going to sit here. It's about a 30-minute long video, 33 minutes, 16 seconds, and we're going to actually watch with me ever so often making a couple comments when it comes to some of the actual speakers and listen to the different comments, and we're going to have our own little commentary, and this will give you a chance to be able to fight back. So let's go ahead and flip over, and then at the end we're going to actually see the votes as they're being read out, or well, basically we're going to see them after they're read out. I'm going to put up a flash screen of all the votes, and then we'll come back up top and we'll talk about what this means for the next step. Okay, guys, sorry about that. Now, we are actually here. I pulled this off YouTube and recorded it on OBS, so at least we'll get a chance to sit here and actually work on it. So, if I accidentally hit a wrong button, I apologize, but let's get to it.
And the amendment is agreed to. Further amendments, Ms. Lowy.
Now, just for a little bit of an understanding, Mrs. Lowy, she is actually the one who is proposing this amendment, which would basically strike all the language for the vape industry out of the bill.
I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will read.
An amendment offered by Mrs. Lowy.
Consider read. The gentlelady is recognized.
My amendment would strike section 753, which is reported in the New York Times, was written by the nation's largest tobacco company, and would in effect exempt thousands of e-cigarettes now on the market from an FDA review of their health risks and youth appeal. The Tobacco Control Act, which passed Congress with bipartisan support, provided FDA with the tools to review new tobacco products. Since enactment, e-cigarettes have made significant gains in popularity, particularly among youth.
You notice, as I've been talking to you a lot, they are bringing up youth. Once again, they're always talking about the youth, but let's hop right back in.
E-cigarette use among teens has risen tenfold in the past decade, rising to 16% of teens in 2015, an estimated 3 million American teens. E-cigarettes are now more popular among teens than traditional cigarettes.
Now, wait a minute here. To me, doesn't that kind of seem like a positive? We know that e-cigarettes are 95% safer than the combustible cigarette, according to the Royal College of Physicians. Now, I do not endorse teen vaping. I do not endorse children vaping, or teens, young adults, however you want to say it. But the thing is, would you rather all those teens be smoking? I wonder if this woman would rather they be smoking. It's kind of dumbfounding about it.
While we do not know what is in e-cigarettes, study after study finds that most show high level of formaldehyde and other cancer-causing chemicals. There are...
Now, wait a minute. We don't know what's in e-cigarettes. Yeah, we do. It's right back here. Propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, liquid nicotine, and flavorings. That's it. And the formaldehyde, that was an old study that was done in non-vaping parameters. Their study was flawed. Let's continue this.
Already more than 7,000 flavors of e-cigarettes on the market, many geared toward children.
Now, just as I had talked, you know, flavors geared toward children. Adults don't like flavors. How many, you know, I want to hear this down in the comments for any of you that watch this. How many of you used electronic cigarettes flavorings to quit smoking? How many of you actually, the flavors is what helped you to quit smoking?
Fruit Loops, gummy bears, Swedish Fish. If this bill...
Now, Fruit Loops, it's sold, and if I'm not mistaken, a lot of adults still like it. Gummy bears, I'll be honest, I'm a lover of gummy bears. I mean, look at my size. I love gummy bears. Swedish Fish, I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm also not a big fan of Swedish Fish e-liquid.
Were to pass with Section 753 included, the FDA would never be able to put the genie back in the bottle, unable to regulate or even know what is in these products forever.
Now, here's the other thing. Unable to know what's in them forever. There's this little thing called testing. You can test while it's still going on. I mean, look at the years Big Tobacco was involved, and they tested and they learned more of what was in them. But we already know what's in vape liquids. Again, propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, flavorings, and liquid nicotine.
Able to put the genie back in the bottle, unable to regulate or even know what is in these products forever. This year, a new provision was added, which I am certain the majority will pretend is a compromise on flavors. This is false and nothing more than a sleight of hand. The new language would allow for an alternate review process outside of the one passed by Congress in the Tobacco Control Act, which would create unnecessary delays and allow even more products to come on the market without review.
Now, wait a minute here. If I'm not mistaken, technically, there's still that grandfather date. And that's all we're going for, is to allow the grandfather date. Now, yes, a lot of companies are coming out with products violating even the August 8th, 2016. And I'm not going to go into the legality of that because, honestly, I don't totally agree with them doing it. But it's going to happen no matter what. I'm going to be honest with you. Because people don't care. All they care about is the almighty dollar. And that's all that overseas a lot of times cares about. So, you know, but the thing is, liquids, it would allow maybe for other companies to have the same flavor, but that's about it. But let's dive on in some more.
Under this weakened alternative, it would be harder for FDA to address tobacco companies' use of kid-friendly flavors. We should not make the thousands of candy and sweet-flavored products that have entered the market and poisoned our children the new industry standard.
Now, wait a minute here. Industry standard? What industry is she looking at? We really don't have a standard. You have fruits over here. You have desserts over here. You have candies back here. You have this. You have that. You have alcohol-flavored e-liquid. You have tobacco-flavored e-liquid. You have so many flavors, it's crazy. And she's citing all these different flavors. Yet she's saying desserts, sweet stuff, and candies, which go in sweet stuff, are the industry standard. I disagree with that. Plus, I'll tell you right now, a sweeter e-liquid actually has helped me eat less sweets. And I know this has happened with a lot of people. But let's get back into it a little bit.
And leave important questions on public health unanswered. The FDA is already preparing to address flavors. We'll be able to do so much faster if this rider were not included. So,
now, she's saying that they're already preparing to address flavors. We saw that when Dr. Gottlieb came out. But the thing is, Dr. Gottlieb's bill, or I'm sorry, it's not even a bill, Dr. Gottlieb's guidance technically could go to August 8th of 2018. He could technically bump it back up, even though he bumped it to 2022. But what this does is, this saves them a little bit of time, saves the government money, instead of the nanny state that we're currently in when it comes to e-vapor products.
oh, to conclude, don't take it from me, here's what the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Lung Association, the American Medical Association, the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, and the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids have to say, quote, Section 753 is not a compromise. This rider has only one purpose, to limit the use of one of FDA's most important tools for protecting kids and public health. So, the question I pose to my colleagues is...
Ooh, now we're going to hear a big question, and we already know where it's going. It's being aimed at, do you support the children, or do you support big tobacco?
Whose side are you on?
Told ya!
I ask that again. Whose side are you on? The side of families, our children, our leading public health groups trying to protect our kids?
You notice, she said, our leading. Because she knows good and well the Royal College of Physicians ruled vaping 95% safer than the conventional cigarette that's combustible.
Or the tobacco industry. There is no middle ground. Thank you.
Ms. Lowy for her comments. Chairman Adderall is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to oppose the amendment. For 3 years, this subcommittee has carried language that addresses the disparity in regulation between traditional cigarettes and harm-reducing electronic vapor products.
Now, just for a little bit of clarification, Mr. Adderholt, he is the chairman of the committee that presented this, and yes, he is speaking of pretty much the Cole-Bishop Amendment that they've been trying to push through for all these years.
Each year, this bill's added provisions to address the concerns the opponents of this bill has raised, and this year is no different. These alternatives to cigarettes, in the words of the FDA's own top official.
Now, mind you, the FDA's own top official, Mitch Zeller,
for tobacco products, has publicly stated, if we could get smokers to switch all of their cigarettes to these vapor products, that would be good for the public health.
Now, when Mitch Zeller says that it's good for the public health, why can't these congressmen and women understand this? Mitch Zeller is the biggest idiot when it comes to going against the e-cig industry. And yet even he says that if we could switch all from combustible cigarettes over to e-cigs, it'd be better for health.
The Royal College of Physicians stated that these products were 95% safer than traditional cigarettes.
Again,
unfortunately, the problem is the regulation that is put in place by FDA would shut out the majority of these harm-reducing alternative products.
To clarify that, he said majority. It's actually 99.9%, which I think is closer to 100% when you really look at it.
The cost to even apply for anyone to apply for approval would be in the millions of dollars. So the only ones that, if we don't keep this language in here, the ones that we are benefiting is the big tobacco companies. They can only they can afford the cost, while these small.
Oh crap! Sorry about that, guys.
Small businesses are forced to shutter, and the big tobacco once again monopolizes the market. For example, an article in the Winston-Salem Journal newspaper headlined "How One Big Tobacco Company Wants FDA to Ban Vapor E-cigs." It's in the interest of the bottom line of big tobacco companies to shut down e-cigarettes and the vapor market.
Now, you see, they flat out said it is in the tobacco company's best interest to shut out e-cigs. Why do you think the tobacco companies got into the e-cig market? Because they know that we are the future.
One of the biggest concerns, and the ranking member mentioned that, is the potential for these products to hook our kids on nicotine through the reuse of some of these attractive flavors like gummy bear, cotton candy, as was mentioned. And I can clearly see how this could be an issue, and so FDA has the authority to address this issue and to regulate flavors. The difference is that FDA will do this in a science-based way and still help people who want an alternative to traditional cigarettes. So,
exactly. Do it in a science-based way. Understand what you're actually going after. Then make a decision. Don't just categorize everything as one thing.
I would urge my colleagues to oppose the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Addo. Mr. Bishop's recognized.
Now, if you remember, this is actually Sanford Bishop of the Cole Bishop Amendment. So this is the guy who has been teamed up with Congressman Cole to help try to save the industry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me say that I have the highest respect and the deepest love for my ranking member from New York.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this, or no, you know what? I'll say it later.
Ms. Lowy, but as you know, I support the e-cigarette and the premium cigar communities, and I support very much an alternative to smoking cigarettes. Therefore, I rise in opposition to the amendment that attempts to undo the significant headway that's been made in this area. And I also urge my colleagues in this room to also oppose this amendment. Mr. Chairman, I voted for the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act in 2009.
Now, mind you, everybody goes back on original intent of the bill. This gentleman stated that he actually voted on that bill. So he has a place to stand when it comes to original intent.
And I support the FDA's deeming regulation, which regulates cigars, pipe tobacco, and e-cigarettes. And last year, I joined Mr. Cole in offering the Common Sense Cole-Bishop Amendment, which was adopted by this very committee.
It was adopted by the committee and removed by Nancy Pelosi when it came up for a vote on the floor. That's where our next step is, but let's continue.
This year, the subcommittee's mark included a more robust version of the Cole-Bishop Amendment. The language addresses concerns that have been raised over the years, such as battery safety to prevent malfunctions, characterizing flavors in e-vapor products, marketing restrictions, and self-service display bans to
Now, mind you, everything he's mentioning except for battery safety as well as the flavor issue, well, technically the flavor issue is in the Tobacco Control Act. But what this amendment actually does is it separates that language to where they have to use the two different. I really think that the intent of Congress in this is to separate the two. Now, whether or not some people will agree in that is the law side of it, maybe not. That's where it's a little vague, but let's continue.
Protect our young people, new labeling requirements, and registration. More specifically,
now, here's the thing. New labeling requirements. I want to make sure to get this flat out there to you. When they're talking about new labeling requirements, they're not talking about getting childish flavors off the bottles. That right there, the only way that will happen is if we actually get a bill. Well, no, it really can't even be a bill. We have to do that through the industry. We have to do that through the boycotts, but we have to do it to where these other companies aren't getting all the manpower and aren't getting all the publicity. That's the bad side of things. Even bad publicity is good publicity.
The amendment would require that within 36 months of enactment of the FY Agriculture Bill, the FDA will promulgate proposed product standards for vapor product batteries and characterizing flavors.
Now, what that actually does is that actually allows for an actual time frame, a legal time frame, for them to sit down and be like, okay, within 36 months, it can be in 3 months, it can be in 36 months, has to be within 1 week to 36 months, or even 1 day from the passage of this, that they come up with the idea. And what this also does is it takes it away from the August 8th of 2018 date and gives a longer date, is what that is doing. Yes, that comes in before the 2022, but here's the thing. Legally, it could be next year. Bottom line, they could change it back and make it next year on August 8th, 2018. But let's dig in a little more.
It will permit vapor products to be advertised in print publications only if the publication meets the FDA's criteria for an adult publication.
Again, a regular tobacco issue.
Cigarettes and smokeless tobacco. It will prohibit self-service displays of vapor products, except in adult-only facilities. It will require the following labels on vapor product packages and bottles to read, quote, "Keep out of reach of children. Underage sale prohibited. The product's nicotine content." One of the reasons I support this is because e-cigarettes have been extensively studied.
You know, I gotta say something here. I agree those need to be on there, but who doesn't know that? I mean, you're not going to put a bottle where your kid can pick it up and drink it. You're not going, if it contains nicotine. We're dummifying our nation. We have to dummify our nation just in order to get some of this stuff done.
By the experts from Public Health England, the Royal College of Physicians.
Again, he's now starting to bring up the Royal College of Physicians and Public Health England, which actually lowered their healthcare costs on the long run because of supporting electronic cigarettes as a tobacco harm reduction product.
We've both concluded that e-vapor products are 95% less harmful than combustible cigarettes. I want to help people in our country, America, to cycle off of cigarettes, which is an addictive habit that's not very easy to kick. This is personal for me. I've interacted with and I personally know of smokers that were up to 2 packs a day.
Now, how many of us were a pack to 2 packs a day? Sometimes I've known of people, to be up to 3 packs a day when they switch over to vapor products.
Through transitioning to e-vapor products.
You notice he used the key word transitioning. It's not overnight, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk about this more here in a little bit.
Have been successful for the first time in kicking the combustible habit. There's a successful business, Good Life Vapor in Albany, Georgia, who themselves use e-vapor to kick the habit, and now they employ prior smokers. They manufacture the products, they distribute them, they sell them, both domestically, and they have a tremendous market abroad. They export. This is important because they're using their knowledge of the nicotine struggle to help other people in kicking this awful habit. I'm serious about helping people that want to quit smoking. They want to quit smoking combustible cigarettes.
As are we all that are in the industry. We want more than anything else to put the tobacco companies and ourselves out of business. Our ultimate goal is for everybody to get off nicotine totally. But you know what? If they have to use nicotine, I'd rather it be in something that's less harmful to themselves. Again, let's hop down.
And I view e-vapor as another viable tool to do just that. And that is why, with deep respect for my ranking member, I urge my distinguished colleagues here today to all...
Did you notice the gentleman behind her as well as the distinguished lady right over there? You notice her smirk? The funnier part was the gentleman behind her's smirk when he said that. You know what? Let's hop back 10 seconds and watch that again.
Just that. And that is why, with deep respect for my ranking member, I urge
you see that smirk?
Distinguished colleagues here today to also oppose this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Further discussion, Mr. Cole is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I won't take a long time because I think the arguments have been very ably laid out by the chairman and the ranking member of the subcommittee. And I want to tell you, in full disclosure, I'm not a vapor, but I will admit to my great vice of smoking cigars, which I'd never done until I met Hal Rogers.
Now, mind you, he's saying this sarcastically, but you know, he flat out admits he doesn't vape. This is the type of individual that we have to win over. Just like, you know, this is Congressman Cole. This is the type of individual we have to win over. Those who are not vapors, who do not vape, but want to support our cause.
If you believe that, I got a couple other ones for you too. But I learned a lot smoking cigars with my chairman. But I want to be serious for a minute here, because I did not know a lot about the vaping industry when I got involved in this legislation. I want to thank Mr. Bishop in particular for working with me to make this a much, much better and more robust bill and or amendment, and then now we've got help get it into the base bill. But I have talked since this product or this amendment was introduced with dozens and dozens of people from my own district around the country that tell me how this has helped them get off cigarettes. I have looked at the evidence in terms of how harmful it is versus cigarettes. And frankly, we've tried to give the FDA a more robust way to regulate the entire industry by category instead of by individual product. If you don't think this is onerous, there's actually only been 2 times that somebody in the vaping industry has gone through this process. And the first time, they had to apply 100,000 pages of information costing $1 million. The second one ran to 2 million pages.
Now, did you just catch that? 100,000 pages, and then it turned into 2 million pages. That's what companies like Smiley, Minuteman E-Liquid, Adore E-Liquid, and a lot of us are coming up against, but that's per product, probably.
And that's regulation run amok. That is regulation.
Amen. Regulation run amok.
Industry out of business. This industry didn't even exist, really, in 2009 when the FDA started this. And again, we have lots of scientific evidence that shows that this is not nearly as harmful as cigarettes, and it's used by many, many people as a substitute to help them get off cigarettes into a more healthy lifestyle. Now, the FDA will continue to regulate. It will continue to be very robust. They can continue to do, thanks to a lot of things my good friend from Georgia put in here to make sure that children don't use this. The same thing, by the way, in the premium cigar industry. There's no reason to put it out of business. It's actually easier under the existing regulation to get cigarettes approved than it is to get premium cigars post-2007 or vaping products. So this is a common sense response to a regulatory system run amok. And I don't think it's wise to punish small businesses, and that's who's mostly involved in this, or to punish individual users who've used this product to get off of tobacco. They ought to have that option. We ought to continue to study. If we find evidence that we're wrong, then the FDA can act. Nobody's taking away their ability to actually police, but we are removing regulation that is punitive, retroactive, and takes a product out of the marketplace, which is actually helping people.
Notice the key there. Punitive. Taking them out of the market while they're still helping people. I mean, that right there is a perfect example.
Their decision in the end, we should respect that.
Again, it is our decision in the end. We should respect that. I totally agree with you, Congressman Cole. And you know what? I'm starting to lighten up a little bit to this bill. I mean, is it exactly what I'd want? Am I afraid of the word characterizing flavors? Of course. But I'm starting to lighten up a little bit to it, even though I worry about the characterizing flavors, because of the precedents used in the Tobacco Control Act.
Mr. Cole, Ms. DeLauro is recognized.
Out of the marketplace.
Oh, the result.
Okay. Sorry about that. I made a little bit of a mistake. So I backed it up a little bit. But now this one is going to be fun. Earlier in this, she was talking about chickens from China. Now she's talking about vapor products. I love how she goes all over the map with this committee meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of the Lowy Amendment. I'm just thinking here for a second, recalling in my mind's eye the hearing that our former colleague, Mr. Waxman, had, where everyone had to raise their hands about whether or not, nicotine was a problem or so forth, and we know the results of all of that. Maybe we need one of those kinds of hearings on this, but this is...
Now, here's the funny part. Here are congressmen, men and women, saying nicotine is the problem, but most medical professionals actually say nicotine is not the problem, especially in e-liquid form, especially in, like, this Minuteman is 0.06. This right here is not the problem, because nicotine is so minute in there. It is no different than coffee to your system. It does the same thing. Nicotine is not the problem. The combustion, the tar, everything else is the problem.
It's a rider that is toxic. It changes an important date in the Tobacco Control Act and exempts e-cigarettes and other tobacco products from what is an important product review requirement.
Actually, here's the thing. It doesn't change an important date. All it changes is the date that they had to use from the original. I mean, they had to go way back when pretty much vaping didn't even exist hardly. It barely existed in 2009 and 2007 when this actually came out. And the original date is terrible. But let's get back into it.
8 years since Congress passed the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act, still many kinds of tobacco products are not fully regulated, and youth are using those products at disturbing rates.
Now, here's the funny part. Youth doesn't just use these products. They use regular tobacco. The sad part is, you get rid of this, and yes, we don't want youth using these products, but what are they going to do? They're going to go back to cigarettes. So, would you prefer they die of cancer?
That is the issue. Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Again, Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Some agency that we try to listen to very carefully about disease control and prevention, estimates that in 2016, e-cigarettes remained the most commonly used tobacco product among high school and middle school students.
again, we don't market to them. You know, you tell them not to do it. This is a parenting issue. This isn't a government issue.
Over 11% of high school students reported using e-cigarettes and over 4% of middle school students. What are we going to do to drive down those rates?
You know, I'm going to say something else. You know, let's look at movies. If you remember the 1950s, let's use Grease for a perfect example. How many people in Grease and Grease 2 were vaping? I can tell you right now, pretty much all the pink ladies, all the T-birds, every one of them smoked. I wonder, you know, I had asked this before, but would Danny Zuko have vaped instead of smoked? I bet you he probably would have.
The rider currently in the bill does just the opposite. If we grandfather in nicotine products already on the market, exclude them from FDA review, we weaken the Tobacco Control Act and we undermine the FDA's ability to protect the public. The rider allows these products to remain on the market without an independent science-based assessment of their risks to public health.
Now, wait a minute here. We have had independent studies as a general on e-cigs. You remember just a couple minutes ago, Sanford Bishop was talking about the Royal College of Physicians and Public Health England. Oh, that's right. It wasn't American-based, so it doesn't matter. We got you there, woman. You want just the money coming into America. That's how you want the research done. Gotcha.
No mistake, the rider is not a compromise. You take away one of the FDA's most important review authorities, it ensures that shamelessly flavored tobacco products that appeal to youth remain on the market for years to come.
Again, going back to the youth. This is so repetitive, it's starting to give me a headache. Luckily we're close to halfway through this thing and almost 3/4 of the way through her ranting. So let's get this over with her.
Supporters of this rider like to highlight that it requires the FDA to issue a product standard on flavors. But quite frankly, the FDA already has this authority. They could act to remove bad actors from the market as early as next year.
Yes, they do have this authority, but the problem is e-liquid needs separated from tobacco. That's where the issue is. And I really think that's part of the reason for this bill. Again, yes, I totally am on the fence when it comes to whether or not this bill will actually help us or hurt us. But this does help to be able to separate e-liquid from tobacco.
In contrast, what this rider does is give the FDA 3 years to finalize a flavor product standard and an additional year for manufacturers to implement. Look,
you know, the more and more I hear them talking, I know what the intent of this bill is. It is to get a standard, not to just ban all flavors outright. I really think that now. Even though, you know, I'm on the fence a little bit still, but I can see more where this could possibly be more. Just get the standard. Don't ban them outright.
We do have regulations to protect our youth from these and other tobacco products. We need to know what is in these products.
Dumb woman, I've already told you what's in these products. I guess you're not listening to all the people. Propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, nicotine, suspended in either VG, PG, or both. And lastly, flavors, suspended in either PG or VG.
Who is making them and how, in fact, they are being marketed.
Now, here's the thing. I have no problem with knowing who's marketing them. You know, we still have the registration. They'll know who's marketing. And on top of that, you know, how they're being made. I have no problem with, you know, something saying, you know, you got to make in a lab. You got to be legit. We all have no problem with that. We want that.
I urge my colleagues, let us protect our kids. Let's vote for this amendment and not one more time be in the pocket of the tobacco industry.
Also, again, vaping is small business. It isn't big tobacco. So, I mean, yes, I guess you could say we're the tobacco industry because we're a tobacco product, but honestly, we're not the tobacco industry, dumb woman. I'm sorry, I have all the respect in the world for our congressmen and women, but, you know, that just shows how dumb they are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Royal ballot, and then Dr. Harris, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of the amendment offered by Ms. Lowy. As was stated, this amendment is more about protecting our youth. This rider would exempt e-cigarettes and cigars on the market from a product review, even though we know that these products typically contain nicotine, a highly addictive substance the Surgeon General has found to be unsafe for youth. Additionally, the National Cancer Institute reports that cigar smoke contains higher levels of cancer-causing nitrosamines and tar than cigarettes. E-cigarettes
Wait a minute.
report highly addictive substance the Surgeon General has found to be unsafe for youth. Additionally, the National Cancer Institute reports that cigar smoke contains higher levels of cancer-causing nitrosamines and tar than cigarettes.
Okay, that I have no problem with.
Tobacco product most commonly used by youth, and more than 2,500 kids try cigar smoking every day for the first time. Surveys have found that 81.5% of youth e-cigarette users and 73.8% of youth cigar users say they use the product because, and I quote, they come in flavors I like. While this rider does require FDA to issue a product standard on flavors for e-cigarettes, it leaves out cigar flavors and will prevent FDA from taking action against even the most egregious flavored products for probably 4 years.
Here's the thing. It doesn't go after cigar flavors. No, because they're letting that part stand. Duh.
As co-chair of the Public Health Caucus, I am very concerned that both this rider and the premium cigar rider in today's Ag Appropriations bill would essentially slow down or prevent the FDA from addressing the many other public health issues raised by these products, including batteries that have a record of exploding, widely varying levels of nicotine, and exposure to other toxins and carcinogens. We have a moral responsibility to protect our children from the public health risks caused by all tobacco products.
And again, we have no problem with protecting the children, but don't go after adults' choices. We already have the 18 and over rules set in place by the Tobacco Control Act. They're not going after that, so I see no issue here.
I urge my colleagues to vote yes to strike this rider and to allow the FDA to use its science-based review process to keep our kids safe.
Thank you, Ms.
I yield back.
Howard. Dr. Harris is recognized, and Mr. Serrano will be recognized.
Okay, now Dr. Harris is one that you really need to pay attention to. I really like this guy.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. Look, smoking is bad. There's no question about it. When I go to pre-op patient for anesthesia, I mean, one of the things we have to do, one of the quality measures in the hospital I work is say we have to counsel the patient about, we have to ask the patient about cigarette smoking, counsel them. And I always do. And I tell them, look, if you smoke, it's bad for you. You know that. And most people nod their heads, yeah, they know it. And then I suggest if you try to stop smoking, and I will bring it.
Well, wait a minute here. We got to hear this again.
And counsel them. And I always do. And I tell them, look, if you smoke, it's bad for you. You know that. And most people nod their heads, yeah, they know it. And then I suggest if you try to stop smoking, and I will bring up, if they're unsuccessful, have you tried vaping?
Again,
you know that. Most people nod their heads. Yeah,
let's listen to that again to make sure I heard it right.
Smoking, and I will bring up, if they're unsuccessful, have you tried vaping?
Now, this is a big thing. A doctor that's an anesthesiologist asking them, if they tried vaping. He understands it's 95% safer than the conventional cigarette.
Because the fact of the matter is that, you know, this was studied in the UK. The National Health Service actually funded a study with Public Health England, looked at this 2 years ago. I mean, they've extensively looked at this. Believe me, nobody thinks smoking is good. What are their conclusions? Vaping is 95%. It's not healthy for you, but it's 95% better than smoking a combustible cigarette.
Again, a doctor that actually looks at research. This is a good sign to see someone like this.
And to quote from them, it says, and when supported by a smoking cessation service, vaping helps most smokers to quit tobacco altogether.
Again, when partnered with cessation counseling or a cessation program, that makes sense. You know, when you have a support, you're going to be able to quit. That's what the good side of us being vapors and helping each other is. We are a support group. We are basically, when we get together and we talk, we are basically like a cigarette anonymous. We come in there, we know we have an issue, we know we want to get off cigarettes, and we're using vaping to do that. It's no different than using like methadone to get off meth.
Now look, the ranking member, and the language is carefully thought out, and you know, the health subcommittee chairman has worked to put in language to protect it from the use by minors. The fact of the matter is you're throwing baby out with the bathwater if we say we're going to regulate this product out of existence because it is useful for smokers to break the habit of smoking combustible cigarettes. And for that reason, I will, I support the current language in the bill.
Again, we have a doctor that's actually supporting this.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Mr. Serrano is recognized.
Thank you. I try very hard not to be repetitious, but...
Now, this guy reminds me a lot of somebody that would be from The Godfather. I mean, he makes me think of Chi-Chi or one of them. If you've watched Godfather, you'll understand.
Rosa spoke about the issue that I wanted to speak about. I remember those hearings, and I remember how everybody raised their hands and swore that tobacco was fine, nicotine was fine, it was not a problem. And later we found out that they either had bad information or outright lying to us. And
now, there is something I want, especially during his. You notice the woman right there. The black woman sitting right next to him and the woman next to her. Watch them very closely during this.
Congress, and it was a bad situation. Now, we know that there are very few Americans left who do not agree that cigarettes are bad for you. And so, we have a product here, and I hate to point any member out and use them as part of my defense, if you will, or my opposition. But Dr. Harris said, it's bad for you. Not as bad as, but bad for you. Well, when I hear a doctor tell me it's bad for you, that means I want people to look at it further. I want them to go in deeper. And that's what this amendment does. All Ms. Lowy is saying don't change it. Let's look at it. Look at it deeper. Because every time we've been told...
Now, you notice she shook her head. If you watched really closely, she shook her head.
Oh, some of these things were okay, or not that bad. It turned out to be just the opposite. In New York alone, 29% of high school students are smoking, and most are using e-cigarettes. Now, it's the new fad, it's the new mod, and so everybody thinks that it's okay. But we don't know if it's okay, and we think it's not okay.
Again, it is 95% safer than cigarettes. We know this because of the Royal College of Physicians.
So I support the amendment because I feel that the amendment does not undo anything that's in place. It simply says, let those methods that are in place for looking at this issue to to look at it deeper before we jump to conclusions that we found.
You couldn't see the guy behind this guy because of me being there, but look at that. She's actually yawning because she's getting bored of this guy already.
Something that's a little better than what we had before. No, what we had before.
Okay, let's get this guy and let's turn him into Don Chichi. I'll gladly be Michael Corleone with this guy.
Was terrible, and if this goes anywhere near it, then it's terrible too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion, Ms. Wasserman Schultz is recognized.
Oh, let's get into a little detail with this one. Just today, one of her aides was brought up on 4 counts, felony count, or was brought up on 4 things. So this woman right here has some things going on in her own camp, but she is crazy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I hear my colleagues saying that e-cigarettes and vaping are a solution to help people who have been smoking for years traditional cigarettes and get them to quit and use something less harmful to their health. And if we were able to say e-cigarettes are going to only be used for that purpose, then we would be discussing something entirely different. But that's not what e-cigarettes are limited to. They are marketed to children.
Again, we've already been down this road. I ain't going through it again.
And 18% of high school students in my home state use e-cigarettes. You have 85% of children who use e-cigarettes who use flavored products. These are not smokers who have been hooked on 2 packs a day for 30 years.
Excuse me. Yes, a lot of us are. A lot of us were smokers. The majority of us were smokers. I love being the fly on the wall right now because she is so lying right now.
These are children. And these companies market the flavored products intentionally to get kids hooked on nicotine.
Again, we don't market to children. What do you see marketing to children right here? This is lemonade and iced tea. That's all it is. It's not marketing to children. Get that through your thick skull, you nimwit.
Nicotine is an addictive substance.
Now, it's no more addictive than coffee or any type of caffeine. So, you know, an addictive substance is a lot more than just that. So let's continue on, and sorry about that flip out. I don't know why it did that, but let's continue.
No way that anyone could stand here and argue that nicotine is not harmful to your health.
We never said it was not harmful, but again, it's no more harmful to your health than caffeine.
Not only is nicotine harmful to your health, but you have many, many other chemicals that are contained in e-cigarettes.
Again, okay, many other chemicals. Propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, flavoring, and nicotine.
That are not only not harmless, as the Surgeon General has said, but they can be potentially harmful and eventually cause significant health problems.
Now, she said, as the Surgeon General has said. That was the former Surgeon General. We have not had the Surgeon General that is current come out for or against vapor products. We haven't had it happen. So, technically she's lying there because the Surgeon General had said it. Yes. But the current that Surgeon General is no longer the Surgeon General. He is a Surgeon General now. He is not the Surgeon General.
Studies have found other chemicals besides nicotine and toxins present in some e-cigarettes, like formaldehyde.
Again, all these are the same things that were brought up back many years ago by a false study done way out of proportion to true vaping. It was a 0.18 ohm coil at 5 freaking volts. Come on, that's too hot to even vape.
Acrolein, volatile organic compounds like toluene, tobacco-specific nitrosamines, and metals like nickel and lead.
Now, I could see maybe nickel or lead, but again, that's if you're overheating your coil. Maybe there's small traces, but, you know, there's actually been studies that have shown that it takes it takes a lot more vapor to do what even one puff of a cigarette will do to your system.
Do we really want to continue to move in a direction where we are encouraging people, allowing companies to encourage people to ingest those kinds of toxins? I mean, the first Surgeon General found that ingestion of e-cigarette liquids, which happens often, containing nicotine, can cause acute toxicity and possibly death if the contents of refill cartridges or bottles containing nicotine are consumed.
Well, duh, you don't drink the crap, woman. I mean, I would not take this bottle, unscrew the top, and drink it. If I did, I'd have my head in the toilet. We've seen that done by Robbie Vapes. He did it just to prove a fact. But it didn't kill him. It's when you ingest large amounts. Now, if I were to take this right here, tip it over my mouth and drink it, this is my nicotine. Yeah, this would kill me. This right here would just make me sick, depending on how much I drank of it. This is what infuriates me about a lot of what they talk about in here.
Exposure to liquid nicotine found in e-cigarettes has resulted in thousands of calls to poison control centers. We have made...
Now, I want to know how many calls Poison Control Center gets in this time period that it was thousands. Probably millions of calls.
So much progress in smoking cessation and helping people stop and never start tobacco usage. There is nothing about what is in this bill that is going to help continue us moving in that direction.
Well, first off, we don't, we say flat out, if you don't vape, don't start smoking. That's already an industry standard.
It's unacceptable, and unacceptable that according to the National Youth Tobacco Survey, over 2.3 million high school students and 620,000 middle school students, and as a mother of a 13-year-old, this is incredibly disturbing that 620,000 middle school students currently use e-cigarettes.
Now, how many of those, we need to go back before e-cigs and see how many people were actually smoking. I think if we were to do that, we'd see the smoking rate has went down, vaping has went up, and all that is those that would have already been smoking are now vaping and using a 95% safer product. Do we support it? No, but kids are going to be kids. They're going to get it. That's a parenting issue. That isn't a legislature issue.
We do not. It is immoral for us not to adopt this amendment, and I urge members to support it.
Thank you, Ms. Wasserman Schultz. Ms. Pingree is recognized, and then we're going to move to Ms. Lowy to her amendment to close. Ms. Pingree, welcome.
Mr. Chair, I request to yield my time to the ranking member, Ms. Lowy.
Thank you, Ms. Pingree. I just wanted to respond to the distinguished physician and other good friends who have spoken on this issue in opposition of this amendment before I close, because I think it's very important that we address the facts. We've heard from proponents of these riders that e-cigarettes can help smokers quit, and frankly, that has been proven not to be true.
Now, here's the thing. It helped me quit smoking, And if you're on this channel, either it helped you quit or it's helping you quit.
The American Medical Association, 12 other medical societies, 40 others, I won't read them all, have determined that currently available data do not support the use of e-cigarette products as a smoking cessation strategy.
Now, here's the thing. You notice she didn't mention that the Royal College of Physicians and Public Health England reversed this same thing. So what, are American brains no different than English brains?
In fact, the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation...
Or are they different than England brains? I think a human brain is a human brain. Yes, we speak different languages, but they react the same way.
And research has to date not found any cigarette safe and effective in helping smokers quit. That is the standard by which we have in the United States to determine whether a product is approved for therapeutic purposes. According to the CDC, more than half of all e-cigarette users continue to smoke cigarettes.
Now, here's the thing. I've always said every one less cigarette a day is a victory. Would you rather somebody put a pack and a half, which is 30 cigarettes, into their body and it not be the nicotine that kills them, but rather be, or, well, would you rather put all that nicotine, tar, every bit in there? Or would you rather they maybe say vape half the time, smoke half the time, be 15 cigarettes in a day, that's less than a pack, and have vapor products? You know what? I'd much rather half the day be vaping, half the day be smoking. Every one less cigarette is a victory.
That's not me talking. I'm talking about the facts. And according...
That's the facts according to what she wants people to know.
To the list of organizations, this is precisely why we need the FDA to know what is in these products and appropriately regulate.
Again, I'm not touching that subject.
Shall I just go into my conclusion with the additional?
Thank you, Ms. Pingree.
Thank you.
Ms. Lowe is recognized for her final minute.
Given the respect for my colleagues, and by the way, I just want to say to my good friend from Oklahoma, my good friend from Kentucky, we're not talking about premium cigars here. We're talking about e-cigs. Just wanted to clarify. I want to make it very clear to my colleagues, these tobacco provisions are anything but a compromise of an attempt to find the middle ground. These riders allowing the industry to gain an advantage so that they can continue.
Again, it's not a ride. Excuse me, it's not a rider.
Continue to sell their deadly products that lead to almost 500,000 deaths each year.
Now, here's the thing. Vaping. Okay, vaping leads to 500,000 deaths each year. Well, I'm sorry, but I think she's talking about tobacco leads to 500,000 deaths each year. You better really think what you say through, Mrs. Lowy, because you're wrong.
Statistics. Section 753 would put the tobacco industry in the driver's seat and the health of our nation left behind.
Again, it's not the tobacco industry that's in the driver's seat. It's small business in the driver's seat.
So with great respect to my distinguished friend, the ranking member and the chairman, and all those who've spoken in opposition, I urge everyone in this room, think carefully, support the science, support the medical experts, support our children, vote for my amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Lowy. The question is on the Lowy amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the nays have it.
Now, here's the key. He already said that the nays had it. But watch this. And this right here gives us a perfect chance to make a change in Congress this year.
Raise your hand if you request a recorded vote. Appears we have sufficient number. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Adderholt. Mr. Adderholt, no. Mr. Aguilar. Mr. Aguilar, aye. Mr. Amadei. Mr. Amadei, no. Mr. Bishop.
Now listen to this closely, and I'm actually going to flip over to what the actual vote is, and that way, if you miss your congressman, you can actually find your congressman in this list.
Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Calvert. Mr. Calvert, no. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter, no. Mr. Cartwright. Mr. Cartwright, aye. Miss Clark. Miss Clark, aye. Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Cuellar. Mr. Cuellar, no. Mr. Culberson. Mr. Culberson, no. Miss DeLauro. Miss DeLauro, aye. Mr. Dent. Mr. Dent, aye. Mr. Diaz-Balart. Mr. Diaz-Balart, no. Mr. Fleischman. Mr. Fleischman, no. Mr. Fortenberry. Mr. Fortenberry, no. Mr. Frelinghuysen. No. Mr. Frelinghuysen, no. Miss Granger. Miss Granger, no. Mr. Graves. Mr. Graves, no. Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris, no. Miss Herrera Butler. Miss Herrera Butler, no. Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins, no. Mr. Joyce. Mr. Joyce, no. Miss Captor. Miss Captor, aye. Mr. Kilmer. Mr. Kilmer, aye. Miss Lee. Miss Lee, aye. Mrs. Lowy. Miss Lowy, aye. Miss McCullum. Miss McCullum, aye. Miss Meng. Miss Meng, aye. Mr. Molinar. Mr. Molinar, no. Mr. Newhouse. Mr. Newhouse, no. Mr. Palazzo. Mr. Palazzo, no. Miss Pingree. Miss Pingree, aye. Mr. Pocan. Mr. Pocan, aye. Mr. Price. Mr. Price, aye. Mr. Quigley. Mr. Quigley, aye. Miss Roby. Miss Roby, no. Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, no. Mr. Rooney. Mr. Rooney, no. Miss Roybal Allard. Miss Roybal Allard, aye. Mr. Rupersberger. Mr. Rupersberger, aye. Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan, aye. Mr. Serrano. Mr. Serrano, aye. Mr. Simpson. Mr. Simpson, no. Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, aye. Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, no. Mr. Valadeo. Mr. Valadeo, no. Mr. Visklosky. Mr. Visklosky, aye. Miss Wasserman Schultz. Miss Wasserman Schultz, aye. Mr. Womack. Mr. Womack, no. Mr. Yoder. Mr. Yoder, no. Mr. Young. Mr. Young, no.
Are there any members who wish to record their vote or change their vote? If not, the clerk will tally. This vote, the ayes are 22, the nays are 30. The amendment is not agreed to.
Okay, guys, as you saw, the ayes had it at 30. Now, this gives us a plus and minus as to what's going on. First off, yes, we have a little bit of a chance to know who's for us, know who's against us. We knew a lot of them. You know, I'm going to flip back over and let you see some of those again. You know, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, we knew she was going to be against us. You know, we knew a lot of these would be against us. But here's the key. Look at this. All those that said it wasn't a Republican-Democrat issue, it pretty much is a party issue. All the Republicans, which I had to do 2 columns for Republicans, except for 2, were against this amendment to take out the language. And then on top of that, all the Democrats, except for 2, were against the language, or were for the language. So, I mean, it is by far a party issue. Excuse me, I was starting to burp for some reason. But, you know, what this does is it gives us a list starting that we can actually go out there and know who we're fighting against and know who we need to get voted out of office. Let me get a vape. But, oh, actually tonight I want to let everybody know I am vaping Trabuco. I started vaping this. It's the Balboa, and I'll tell you this much. It's a really good one. They're out. It's a tobacco, but they're out actually of Canada, and it's a really good vape. I'll tell you that. It's more of a peach vape, is what it is. It's more of a fruity tobacco, is what it is. I can't tell if it's peach or what it is, but it's something real fruity and real tobacco-y. But, you know, we need to look at this not only as a negative because of that characterizing flavors, but also as a positive. We need to look at it and understand what's going on. But, well, everybody, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I will start, like I've told you guys, making up our voters sheet for next year that you can go out and you can make up to say vote against or vote for this candidate who is against the e-cig industry. But talk to you later, guys, and don't forget, you gotta fight for your rights to vape. Yeah!